All right, we will call to order. We will call to order the July 11th, 2022 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. So first we'll do introduction of the members and representatives. We'll start all the way to my right.
Jody Rector, Planning and Zoning.
Phil Goldsmith, Township Attorney.
Katrina Ingram, Planning and Zoning.
Dennis Kohler, Building Inspector.
Kyle Durst, Vice Chair.
Jake Lake, Chair.
Jeff Wilson, BZA member.
Brad Helm, Planning Member Representative.
Joe Gore, Township Trustee Representative.
All right, next we'll stand and do the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next we'll take roll call. Jody.
Yes, Mr. Gore.
Here.
Mr. Helm.
Here.
Mr. Dersch.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Lake.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Next is approval of tonight's agenda. Just looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Support.
All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
All opposed, none. We'll move on to approval of our minutes from the June 6th meeting. If you were here for that meeting and you'd like to make a motion to approve those minutes, looking for a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes approved. Next, we've got two public hearings tonight. We'll open up the first one, which is the appeal of G&J Holdings on Lavoie Road, requesting a plus or minus 10-foot side yard setback variance. I'll look for a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll motion to open a public hearing.
Support.
All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
All right. So first, I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Rector.
Yes. The applicant is Romanco Building Company. The owner is J&G Holdings, 222 Lavoie Road in Erie, Michigan, 48133. Authorized representative is Mr. Kevin Romanco. Property number 580210100211 on approximately 9.459 acres, zoned I3 General Industrial, requesting a 10-foot side yard setback. The applicant is seeking a 10-foot side yard setback variance from an industrial property line for a 14,263 square foot addition to the existing structure on the east side. Per the schedule of regulations, section 400-1800 and an I3 general industrial, a 50-foot minimum side yard setback is required and a total of 100. The applicant has indicated in the proposed addition will be utilized for storage of materials. The proposed location is at this time the best option for the site to utilize in conjunction with the existing structure. The applicant was removed from the May 25th, 2022 Planning Commission agenda due to the variance request requirement as determined through the site plan approval process. Due to the time frame, this item is scheduled subject to a determination from the Board of Zoning Appeals on the July 13th, 2022 Planning Commission agenda for a decision on the site plan. At this time, no letters or calls of objection have been received. The applicant is proposing the structure. I did submit the site plan. At this time, they feel moving to the east is more beneficial to the industrial building. But I did explain to the applicant this variance would only be granted should the board's desire be to approve it for this structure only. No other addition would have to come back on the site.
Thank you. I assume we have the applicant.
I'm Kevin Romanco, Romanco Building Company.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant from the group while we have an open public hearing?
What are we looking at towards the practical difficulty to grant this variance?
That's what I was wondering as well, because it wasn't really much in the write-up around what the practical difficulty is, other than it's close to the process of whatever is being done there. So that's why I'm kind of interested to kind of get more into that as well.
My first thought was, is it you want to put it on the property because it's cost effective, it's closer to keep all the materials closer to a plant, or to ease up on shipping costs, transportation costs?
It's the same it's a typical problem that I run into with a lot of the cranes buildings that we build. Their main building that's running north and south has 20-ton crane systems that are running the full length, and it's very expensive to build crane buildings with all the steel and stuff that goes into it. So we look at that as being prime real estate, under anything that we can work under the hook of a crane. But we're consuming a lot of that area with storage materials. So we elected to go off to the side of the building so that it's basically cold storage, steel coils, plate metals. Well, they don't do any coil work. It's all plate metal stuff, and put their shipping and receiving. So all that material that's processed and stuff that doesn't need a crane that could be handled with a forklift would go out into this facility. And so that, as if we built onto the north end, the practical thing would be to put a crane building in there, to continue on what we're doing now. But, that may come down the road in the future where we extend the crane building. So what we're trying to accomplish right now is just storage that doesn't need to be underneath a hook. And Greg Forrester wanted me to get the maximum footage that I could just for storage. And so we actually, the addition goes from one set of garage doors up to another set of garage doors, and we're back 40 foot from the property line, and we need the 40 foot that we have there remaining for truck traffic that's running north and south on the property. So this would be the maximum that I could physically put on there and give him the storage that he needs. Does that make any sense?
It does.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask if there was public comment. I don't know if there's, okay. Seeing that we have no public comment, why don't we close the public hearing right now? So I'll look for a motion to close that, and we'll continue discussion.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Support.
All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
All right. So we'll open it up for additional questions and/or comments. I don't know, Mr. Gore, if that answered some of your questions around some potential practical difficulties.
There's a couple in there that we can work with.
Okay. I don't know if you don't mind coming back up, I had a couple more questions. Just to kind of get into the maximum size, right? So just trying to think through the math, trying to understand the equations we got to the size that we're putting off to the side of the building there. I get the rear, in the north end. That makes a lot of sense. But off to the side, there's that extra 10 feet, right? If you didn't have that extra 10 feet, you wouldn't be before us today, right? So I'm trying to understand what was the math that went into calculating the square footage we needed in that side bump out.
Basically, Greg says, give me as big as you can, and I didn't think that we had a side yard setback issue. So we proceeded with the plan of getting, that extra 10 feet. But going back with what, Greg's got all of his racking and all that stuff that's laid out for inside this building footprint already. At the very east wall, there's a drive-through bay where they can pull trucks in and load them up. The rest of the facility is slam-packed full with, or this addition is slam-packed full with racking systems. They're industrial-grade rackings where they stack pallets of all the shipping stuff that's ready to ship out. So they've got it maxed out in their plan already, for what they can do with this building. And I don't know what the future holds. I know that the next edition will probably be more crane space, but I can't see why this, a scenario like this might pop up again for them in the future as fast as they're growing. I've put several additions on that building, and they've been, over the last 5 or 6 years, and they just keep growing and growing and growing. They've got signs out in front, trying to get more help. I guess business is really good, and we need to take care of good people like that in Bedford Township.
Okay.
So practical difficulty, I guess, would be if you didn't get this variance and you had to move that cold storage to another location, then you got the cost of transportation to and from the storage if you had to build off-site somewhere else.
Right. Anytime that you're got a manufacturing facility, as long as you can keep it all under one roof, it's most effective. We're doing a big addition for Sunrise Windows, and a lot of that thinking behind that was because they were shipping their their windows down to a place they were renting in Toledo and putting the glass in it and shipping it back to Sunrise Windows, and it's getting broke along the way. So now we're putting up an addition there so they can keep it all in-house, and they can control damage, they can control loss, things like that. And the same thing applies here. If they went off-site, it just makes it more difficult, to keep overhead expenses, theft, things like that under control.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I'm fine. That's good.
I was thinking maybe along those lines, if you're talking about like a standardized racking, right? Maybe the practical difficulty, the logic behind it. If you have a standardized racking that's X number of feet long or wide, and then you have to have some sort of walkway or whatever it may be, and then you have the lane for the trucking, and then you have to have some level of buffer to the wall. I mean, there may be something there, right? I'm just kind of guessing in my head, if the racking is, say, I guess you'd take that plus the truck lane, and you take a buffer at each point, and that's going to drive your minimum size, and I suppose that's kind of what you're saying, right?
Well, yeah, they went through with different scenarios on racking to lay it out so that they could get the racking that they needed for the product that they wanted to get out from underneath the crane. So this is not a haphazard decision on their part. This is something that they genuinely feel that they need.
No, I mean, in my line of work, when we're trying to assess what we need from a space requirement, it's usually based upon what's the days of supply we need to support the production line to keep it up and running without downtime. That would be typically what we think of in this case. Now, if we talk about the potential future growth, right? So the space might be a little bigger than what is needed, but if potential growth, if he's got to add on to the back for more additional production, you're going to need that space to store supplies to continue to support production. So that could be another potential.
I think at this point, this addition is already maxed out, with product that they're bringing off the floor and storing. Every square inch is utilized already in the planning.
And just thinking about you had mentioned earlier, the 40-foot is really what's necessary for basically for the truck traffic in and out, be able to back in appropriately without issues.
Well, their shipping and receiving on the large plate and stuff is all at the very north end.
Okay.
And there's a pair of drive-through doors that go through. So all the trucks come in on the east drive and head north, they go all the way up to the north of the property, then go through the north end of the building and come out the south. Now this would, as they're heading north, they would be able to pull off and continue north through this building, if it's, finished product that's going out, and then continue on north, on around the building and head out the west driveway.
Okay.
That make sense?
Yep, that makes sense. I don't know if there's any other questions. Mr. Gore, you're a little
I'm
closer.
good. Yeah.
Okay. If you've got a motion.
I can run with a motion real quick. If anybody else have any questions? Okay, so I'm going to make a motion that we grant the variance of plus or 10 minus foot side yard setback variance for G&J Holdings LLC, 222 Lavoy Road, Erie, Michigan, 48133. The variance location is also the same, 222 Lavoy Road, Erie, Michigan. Property number 5802-101-002-11. And for me, the practical difficulties would be what we just discussed, the expense of having your stuff on site. It would be so much more cost ineffective to have it off site, to build somewhere else where your transportation, you might lose some theft, So that's a big practical difficulty for me, and it would go a long way to help them, a local business, by granting this variance. And if anybody has anything to add, I'll happy to entertain that.
Any friendly amendments? If not, is there support?
I'll support.
All right. Ms. Rector, if you would.
Yes. Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Helm?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Dersch?
Aye.
Mr. Lake?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I hope the rest of your evening is just as easy.
All right, we'll move on to the next public hearing, and that is the appeal of Bedford Place Apartments number 2. And this is for a schedule of regulations variance to increase the density to allow for additional 12 rooms. And I think we also have another variance for off-street parking requirements, a variance of 68 parking spaces for a proposed multifamily development in our RM2 multifamily zoning district. Before we get started, I'll look for a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
All right, public hearing is open. Ms. Rector, if you would like to go first.
Yes, again, the applicant is Bedford Place Apartments 2 LLC. It's a vacant piece of property on the north side of Stearns Road, east of Lewis Avenue. Property 5802-026-05901 on approximately 14.48 acres, RM2 multifamily zone. Authorized representative is Mr. Nathan Wagner from Cash Wagner and Associates. The variance requested is per section 400-1800, schedule of regulations, a variance to increase the density to allow for an additional 12 rooms, and 400.1904, a variance of 68 required parking spaces. The vacant subject parcel is located on the north side of Stearns Road, east of Lewis Avenue. The parcel consists of approximately 14.48 acres, having a total of 172 feet of frontage on Stearns Road. The applicant has submitted a letter dated June 9th, 2022, stating the proposed RM2 multifamily development will be a total of 4 three-story buildings consisting of 144 units, comprising of 4 one-bedroom units, which per schedule of regulations is 2 rooms for a total of 8 rooms, and 140 two-bedroom units, which is considered 3 rooms for a total of 420 rooms. Per section 400-1800, notes to the schedule of regulations in an RM2 zoning district, the total number of rooms in a multifamily dwelling shall not be more than the area of the parcel in square feet divided by 1,500. Per section 400-201, the definitions, a room for the purpose of determining lot area requirements and density in a multifamily district. A room is a living room, dining room, or bedroom equal to at least 80 square feet in area. A room shall not include the area in the kitchen, sanitary facilities, utility provisions, corridors, hallways, and storage. Plans presented showing 1, 2, or 3 bedroom units and including a den, library, or other extra room shall count as an extra room as a bedroom for the purpose of computing density. The proposed preliminary submitted plan states the total of 625,037.02 square feet divided by 1,500 permits a total of 416 rooms. The applicant has stated due to the current market, there are inquiries for more 2-bedroom units, 3 rooms, instead of 1-bedroom units consisting of 2 rooms. Thus, the request to increase the density to permit an additional 12 rooms. Please note, the request is not to increase the number of overall units, just the number of rooms permitted in the proposed 144 units. Per section 400-1904 off-street parking requirements, a total of 356 parking spaces is required, where 288 are shown on the submitted plan. The applicant has stated in the submitted letter a variance request of 68 parking spaces is supported by similar projects, including nearby Oliver Estates, and 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit is adequate. The applicant also noted the site conditions present several areas of poor spoil conditions, and a reduction in the required parking count would allow an opportunity to better design around those unsuitable areas. As stated in the submitted letter, in addition, downstream drainage facilities are undersized, and reduction in the impervious area will aid in reducing runoff rates. Should the variance request be granted, the variances required are a variance to increase the density for an additional 12 rooms, a variance of 68 parking spaces. At this time, there have been no letters or calls of objection to this request. And please note, this is the first step of the process for the applicant to continue to move forward with the process of development through the site plan approval. And so thus the request before moving forward through any site plan approval process for review and fees of that nature. This is just a very preliminary plan. They will work more through the engineering details once or a determination is made, should they have to redesign.
Okay, thank you. I assume you're Mr. Wagner?
I am.
If you don't mind, state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Nathan Wagner, Cash Wagner and Associates, 402 East 13th Street, Jasper, Indiana.
Thank you. I guess we'll just ask you if you've got anything to add that Ms. Rector didn't cover that you'd like to have.
No, she did a good job. I would add that 416 rooms are allowed by ordinance, which would allow us to develop 208 one-bedroom apartments if we maxed out the number of units. Like she said, we're just looking to adjust the number of two-bedroom units rather than, a surplus of one bedroom, which, even if you don't technically need a second bedroom, a lot of people want that second bedroom for an office, a den, workout room these days.
Okay. I don't think we're going to have public comment, just a hunch here. So why don't we close the public hearing and we'll continue with discussion and questions. So if anyone wants to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Yep, I'd motion to close the public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Has anybody got any questions or like to go ask any questions while we have Mr. Wagner up here?
I have a question when the time is right. And it relates to the 68 parking space variance being requested. Do you know, are you far enough along at this point to determine what your target market is for these units?
It'd be similar to the Oliver Estates market. It'd be a young professional, maybe a transient type, not necessarily a family with kids. Maybe it's somebody that's moved in to the market for, say, 1, 2, 3 years that knows they're not going to be here long enough to buy, or somebody that's coming in temporarily for corporate housing type thing, or the other primary reason is somebody needs to move in for a couple of years before they buy.
Okay. Or would a segment of the target market be retired folks?
Could be. That's just not that we're excluding them, but it's just not the niche they're after.
Okay.
And,
all right.
and they're not subsidized or tax credited.
Yeah, that didn't make any difference to me. In terms of the parking spaces, I think it's relevant for the board to consider what the target market is to determine the actual number of necessary parking spaces, people coming and going, people visiting, that sort of thing. So if the target market are young professionals without children who are probably both working, probably fewer visitors than if you had family or retired folks with family visiting. So just something for the board to consider in terms of target market. That's all I had.
Thank you.
And I just want to piggyback on that as well, because I did speak with Mr. Wagner on that, and I think some of the parking requirements are going to determine whether the variance is granted on the 2 bedrooms, because 2 bedrooms versus the 1 bedroom is a different calculation for parking.
Thank you.
And you can speak on that if I'm incorrect afterwards.
That's correct. I mean, it's kind of a minimal amount, but to your point, we have room to add those spaces, and it's in the developer's best interest if he needs those spaces. I mean, he could always come back and add them. I mean, he doesn't want to be deficient. And if we didn't have a history with Oliver Estates, it may not be worth asking, but 2.5 just for this amount of units just seems to be excessive based on other projects.
Okay.
So just adding on to thinking about the practical difficulty, right? There's a mention of spoils and insufficient drainage. Is there like a Monroe County Road Commission study on that we can reference, or?
So on the bad soils, there's just some really soft soils, especially on that north end and a little bit down in the southwest corner. So if you look at our site plan, we've kind of left out a couple of areas kind of indicate where those soft areas are. You could always go in and stabilize them and spend some money and make it work. But the primary reason is the drainage. We are trying to work out an issue where we would do some off-site improvements with Prairie Woods. Prairie Woods, 5 and 6, which would be immediately east of us, has a plan where they would upgrade some of the off-site stormwater down Stearns Road, and we're talking to them about piggybacking and maybe splitting some costs with them. But when I say there's some undersized, so Prairie Woods tried to design a system and oversize, if you will, some storm sewers for some extra capacity, and the drain commissioner doesn't like the idea because some of the downstream structures in the creek are at a 24-inch, and he doesn't want to exceed the capacity of those 24-inch pipes. So that's why I'm thinking if we can reduce the number of parking if they're not needed, let's reduce that in the outflow rate and just help the overall situation.
Okay.
We went in down the road with Eagle yet around that property, or no?
I'm sorry.
Have we gone down the road with Eagle? Has Eagle been involved in this, and what's going on with that?
They have submitted a wetland delineation, and those are all unregulated by the state. I did receive an updated one today regarding this parcel, and they are still all unregulated, and that will all come into play once they submit to the state moving forward through development.
And piggybacking off Mr. Goldsmith also, the target market, I understand where you're going with that, but are these going to be Section 8, HUD housing, anything like that? Do we know?
No,
or?
no, these would be market rate, no subsidized, no tax credit. They're all market rate housing.
Just another thought for the group here. I don't know if we have one or two separate requests, right? Because we've got off-street parking, but we also have the density, so we have to think about both. So I don't know because if we don't grant the density, right, the parking is a different conversation because you don't require a variance of 68, it would be 56. So just thinking out loud on that as well, because I think these might be two unique approvals.
I'd recommend that you deal with the density first and make a separate motion for that as opposed to making one motion for both. Get that part of it settled, proceed, and then tackle the parking.
So perhaps we talk more about the density and then we'll switch over to the parking. So the question about density. So I saw the math in the write-up, but I don't know if I completely understand. So I don't know if there can be more, information that we can get on how we come up with the, 416 rooms or 144 units as the max for that space.
Well, by ordinance and the schedule of regulations, it take the square footage of the overall parcel, and an RM1 you would divide by 1,300, and an RM2 is 1,500. And so when they take the square footage of 625,037.02 divided by 1,500, that gives them the permitted number of rooms they are permitted. They are proposing 144 units. They're going to still develop 144 units. They're inquiring to have 12 additional rooms to include those as 2-bedroom. So the unit number is going to stay the same of 144 units. And please correct me if I misspeak on this. 144 units. However, they want to have, their desire is to have more 2-bedrooms. Well, each room, a living room, a bedroom, and a bedroom would count as 3 rooms and 1 unit. Where if it was a 1-bedroom unit, a living room and a bedroom would be 2 rooms. So the unit numbers are going to stay the same. It's the number of rooms within those units is calculated by the density of the square footage of the entire parcel.
Gotcha. So basically, the density in square footage of the parcel divided by 1,500 determines the total amount of rooms that we get.
Yes.
Gotcha. So in this scenario right now, the max we could have, we'd have 16 one-unit apartments and 128 two-bedroom apartments, essentially.
Actually, you could have 208 one-bedroom units.
200, okay,
If we did all one bedroom, you could have 208 total units,
gotcha.
which then would require
Yeah, where's our max?
I was thinking it would require more parking spaces, but it wouldn't.
Okay. Yeah, which would increase the amount of.
Yeah, everything's kind of tied together.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just looking at, under the current max of rooms you can have with that 625,000 square feet. I think that I was getting 344 for parking spaces, but that's kind of a secondary point at this time. Mr. Goldsmith touched on this a little bit too around the potential market. So maybe you can talk to that a little bit more around what's typically being rented, what are people looking for? You mentioned the two-bedroom, but I don't know if you can go into a little more detail around maybe inquiries that the renter is getting in this case.
What do you mean getting?
Like, obviously Oliver is an example that's referenced, and there's a lot of two-bedroom, maybe the surplus of one-bedroom versus two-bedroom. I think there's something there that we might want to tease out as far as a practical difficulty for what the market desires around two-bedroom versus one.
Well, the difference is one bedroom doesn't give people a lot of options. It's either a single person or a couple, and that's it. Where the two-bedroom gives maybe two co-workers that want to live together in the same unit a chance to share, each have a bedroom. It gives a family that might have a kid a bedroom for the kid. It gives either a couple or a single person the ability to use that second bedroom for a den or a library or an office or a workout room. So that it's really a marketability issue. People just, most people don't want a one-bedroom, one-bath house. They want at least two bedrooms and preferably two baths.
Just out of curiosity, is it, because I'm thinking about this township in particular and the potential rent cost versus, say, a more densely populated area. You could probably sprawl out, maybe get a two-bedroom and afford it versus a one-bedroom in a more densely populated area. Is that some of the rationale, perhaps?
I suppose, if I understand your question correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on it. That's why I'm asking.
I mean, if you look at, I don't think you're trying to get at a financial question, but if you are, I mean, you can charge, say you charge $1,000 for a one bedroom, you can make, like I said, 208 one bedroom units, you can get $208,000 a month. Where if you get $1,200 a month for a two bedroom, you're not going to financially make more money per month
Right.
on two bedroom.
I wasn't hinting at that one too much, but I was hinting more at if I'm out looking for a rental unit, two bedrooms going to appeal to me, and I could probably get one cheaper in Bedford Township than I could in, say, Maumee or Sylvania.
I'd say there's probably some truth to that, yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, sorry.
So, put another way, may I? Is there more market demand for a two-bedroom unit versus a one-bedroom unit in your experience?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yep. I'm driving that. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted to correct my error. In an RM1, it is actually a higher density, so it's divided by 1,800 in an RM1 and an RM2. Sorry, I just wanted to correct that.
Lower density. It'd be a lower density.
It would be fewer
Less
units.
dense of the
Yeah,
RM2.
fewer rooms.
They would divide that by 1,800 if it was RM1.
Right.
Where they're divided by 15 if it's RM2.
Gotcha. Thank you. I don't know if any of us would have known, but thank you. All right, any questions, discussion?
I'll ask one real quick. If you were to go down to the maximum allowed number of rooms, would that eliminate a building, or is it is this layout making the most of the building space that you have?
It would not eliminate a building. It eliminates the second bedroom on 12 of the units.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would the footprint be the same?
Yes.
Okay.
And have you guys given any consideration to any other stormwater management options instead of just piping it to a storm drain to help with your soil conditions and the runoff from the site?
Well, we'll have stormwater detention and management on site, yes. But everything, the more we can reduce, it's just better for everybody. Not only us, but the downstream people and the environment.
Or some sort of flow control pond?
So let me answer it this way.
They do that.
You know, by county drainage ordinance, we're only allowed to release at a certain rate.
Yep.
Now we're going to be asked to reduce it even more because of the downstream structures. Their lack of capacity.
Sure, that's the really good argument for the parking.
I mean, if you're looking for a hardship, there's your
Yeah.
hardship.
Yeah. And that's definitely out of your control at that point.
I agree. That's not really, that would be a very good practical difficulty for the parking.
And if you're looking for more of a hardship question, I guess back to the marketability on the density, it's we can build more one bedrooms and still meet the density, but can you rent them? Do people want them? So it's a marketability hardship, if you will.
Going back to the question around the parking calculation for 1 versus 2, obviously well, no, that's a bad argument too. I guess I would have to do the math. I'm trying to think if you had, I think you did the math, right? You said if it was all 1 bedrooms, there would actually be 312 parking spaces required?
Correct.
Based on the
1.5 spots
Okay.
per.
That was correct.
I'm slow with math. I leave it to the engineers. So for the density, I'm still, other than marketability, you guys have anything that you're thinking of that could be a practical difficulty? Yes.
I'm sorry, I was just going to give some clarification that for residential, for multifamily, a 1-bedroom is where you're going to get 1.5 spaces required, and then the 2 is an additional 1 space per room.
Right. Thank you.
Jody, I don't know if you know the answer, or correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that density requirement in the ordinance was based on smaller, like duplex type developments, not a true multifamily.
It's calculated the same for both, whether they're
Right.
single-story or multi-story. And then that's the difference in the parking. When we look at single-story units, we look at, they have a majority of them come with a 2-car garage, and then they have 2 additional spaces in their driveway. So when you see a single unit come in, such as Timber Valley, we're looking at their parking having provided for because they don't actually have a parking area, or say a staging area for visitors. Everybody is desired to park in the driveway. So I can't say that the calculations are differently because we use the same formula, whether it's individual attached units, a 6-unit or an 8-unit or a 4-unit, or if it's multi-story, the calculation is the same. Setback is where you come into the difference. Setback goes by the width, and all of that comes in to calculation when they go through their site plan approval process. Mr. Wagner did calculate their setbacks, so their density and would not change on the setback requirements on the size of the structure.
Got it. Thank you. Really, we're talking about 12 rooms.
Yeah, and I guess this is something I don't think any of us have come across in our time here. The room definition, is there any history behind why that includes non-bedroom living space as a definition of a room? I guess to the normal person, you probably wouldn't consider a living room a living space for cohabiting, bedroom space in terms of density. Unless you were looking at simply from a
That
square
was my
footage standpoint.
question when I asked about whether that definition of rooms density was based on more of a duplex type situation than a higher density multifamily. Because I don't know who told me that, but somebody told me that was the reason. Even though they're calculated the same, that's the reason behind that requirement.
And that could have been discussions when Oliver Place came, because they are the same developers that developed Oliver Place Apartments as well. I'm not sure, so I'm not going to say yes or no. I'm reading the ordinance language, and that's how it's calculated by those rooms.
I'm kind of getting your point, right? So how is it determined it's living room, bedrooms are the only, rooms, right? I mean, you could have
seems kind of weird.
Why
to
does
me.
it matter?
a 2,000 square foot space. You could have a giant kitchen.
Unit.
And
Yeah.
Yeah, I would consider it more bedroom space and unit space if I had to decide on my own.
It's definitely a unique zoning issue that
I was going to say, do you run into this in other places?
a handful, and it kind of seems to be based on the same planner.
It's,
Same consultant that,
it makes the
drafted.
math easy. I'll give it
Most
that.
places go by number of units.
Units. Yeah. That
Not,
would make
not
sense.
this
Right.
number of rooms, because
If
it's
it went by number of units, you wouldn't even be,
right.
wouldn't be talking. He would have been,
As you're,
he's providing better units for our residents,
On the
right?
same,
that's
on the same footprint.
on the same
Same
footprint.
footprint,
Yeah.
yeah.
In reality.
Dennis's point is a good point. You're not changing the footprint. So as you view it through the eyes of practical difficulty, the footprint's going to be identical regardless of the number of rooms. Dennis said it very well. You're providing a more attractive alternative to people who want to reside in Bedford Township. Some of those rooms will be used as a den for a couple, or as suggested, maybe for a workout room, something along those lines. Not necessarily 2 bedrooms. Or some retired couples like to sleep in their own bedroom. You're providing a product that's more attractive, that will draw a clientele that's favorable to the township, and you're not changing the footprint. Those are relevant thoughts to consider.
I was going to say, I think that plays into the parking question as well. 2 spots per unit, more than likely sufficient for the users that'll be there.
But I also like the drainage. That's
There's
even
multiple
better
on
argument,
that
right?
one.
Yeah.
Well, the more permeable area that you have, the better for drainage, and then you're not overloading downstream drainage. You can't have a large drainage pipe funneling into a small, or you're going to have problems, and the drain commissioner isn't going to approve that. So the less you're putting into it, the better, and the less impermeable surface that you have to deal with, the better. It's going to soak into the ground, and that's better for the environment as well.
To that point, can I ask one more question on the drainage? Has any calculations been done to base the number of parking spots on the runoff, or was this simply 2 per unit was the number that was put out there?
The 2 per unit is kind of the average we see in other ordinances. Plus, it's more than adequate. We've seen more. It's more than adequate. We've went as low as 1.5, and been fine. 1.7, 1.8 if we get really tight is what we shoot for, but 2's the norm.
What's been, if I may, Mr. Chairman, what's been your experience at Oliver? Have you had any follow-up? Do you have how many parking spaces per unit do you have there, and have you found it to be adequate and not as opposed to a lack of parking spaces for residents and visitors?
Yeah, they have excess parking over there, and they go back and talk to their managers on different sites and see where are they deficient, what needs to be improved, and parking's never the issue. If there's any issue with parking, it's because too many people congregate around one building because we don't have them spread appropriately or something like that.
Okay.
So really, with the way the parking is now, it was an unintended benefit.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, comments? If not, I think we'll do, sounds like we should first make the motion for the density first, and then we'll tackle the parking. If
Take a
anyone,
stab at the last one. Somebody else can run with this.
I feel like Mr. Dersch might be ready.
I'll work on the second one.
Oh. We can talk it through. So the first one we're really talking about is we're essentially doing more with less and providing a better benefit to the township, right? I think there's a good argument to be made around the, same footprint, more opportunity for marketability with regards to potential clients there. We could probably talk a little bit about the ordinance. It's kind of the calculation. I don't know.
All right, I'll go ahead and take a stab at it. I'll make a motion we go ahead and approve the variance request for an additional 12 rooms in terms of density for the proposed Bedford Place Apartments 2 LLC on the vacant land north of Stearns Road, east of Lewis, property number 58-02-026-059-01, with the practical difficulty of the marketability of the units driven by the community that they're going to be placed in and the desire for 2-bedroom units in lieu of 1-bedroom units.
Just like to add that it won't change the footprint of the property.
No problem there.
All right. Is that a motion? Is that a second then?
Second.
All right. Ms. Rector?
Mr. Dersch?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Helm?
Aye.
Mr. Lake?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right.
Thank you.
And then on the second one, Mr. Dersch, if you were prepared, or Mr. Gore, if you were prepared.
Mr. Gore can go ahead.
Well, for the parking, no, right now I'm not for granting the variance for the parking. I want the parking spaces.
So we have some dissent. Okay. Sounds like we have some discussion then. So let's bring up the points we were talking about with regard to potential practical difficulties. We did mention the drainage. This would be a way to offset some of the drainage requirements by having less parking, allowing the land to soak up the water as opposed to the parking lots. So that was an opportunity there. What is another? We also talked about the Oliver Apartments as a potential precedent, having only 2 parking spots per unit and still being more than adequate for the location. So those were 2 potential. But I mean, if you've got some dissent towards it.
I'm on a total different aspect of it from the law enforcement side. I mean, I know you say there's no issues, but work the street and get called to these apartment complexes nonstop for parking related issues. It's a pain in the hind end. It doesn't matter if you're apartment, mobile home community, parking on the street in a subdivision or something like that. There's always issues. We always get called. It happens. So I'm going to try to alleviate that, and I want the parking spaces. So
There is an argument to be made there. Anybody else have opinions or comments? Maybe other questions?
I thought the same things that you did. I just actually wrote them down for myself, but I also thought, and I think it was mentioned, is that there is the option, right, that the property would allow for in the case that there is an issue or if there's a follow-up after a period of time that additional parking would be required or needed, that it could be added, right?
Yes. Space permits the extra.
That's, that would be totally up to the developer at that time.
Right.
Because you would have already granted the variance, so you would have to trust that if they found through experience that they needed more parking, that they would do the capital outlay to do it. So it wouldn't happen automatically. So, yeah, I mean, just take that into consideration. But your point is well taken, Jeff, and it just depends on the integrity of the developer, and if there is a problem that can be documented, that they need more parking, that they'll actually do the capital outlay because it's not inexpensive.
Yeah, I thought this one had a stronger, this portion of it had a stronger practical difficulty, frankly, before, first on, but then, as Mr. Gore said, right, you can have these issues that I wouldn't know, right, because I'm not in law enforcement. But I would also, and maybe it's kind of a soft point, if you're thinking about the, say, young professionals, Bedford, $1,200 a month, new apartments. I mean, I guess maybe the clientele or the crowd, would you expect maybe to not have the same type of issue that you would have in a, I don't know, in a more urban setting, a lower income, a troubled area? Maybe that's something to consider too. Kind of a softer point, I guess. I don't know that there's any real data behind it, but that would just be my feel, right? If you have 2 spots per unit and you have primarily, young professionals, retirees, very young families in a good area, are you likely to have less trouble than you would be in an area that is $600 or $700 a month in a crummy area of Toledo? I don't know.
Can I make 2 points? I've been developing for these guys for a number of years, and I think we've only had one issue with parking, and it wasn't because we didn't have enough spaces. It was because it was a situation where you had parking, a building, another row of parking behind the first building that was supposed to serve the next building to the north, let's say, and people wanted to park closest to their unit, if you will. So some of the units got overloaded, and then so we didn't. It's not that we didn't have enough spaces; they were just
there was preferred spots.
There was
right?
preferred
Or, yeah.
spots. So the developer went out and added more where he could to help alleviate that situation. They do hire a retired detective that goes around to their sites and inspects for issues like you're talking about. If there's an issue at Oliver, by all means, let me know and we'll try to address it. But I guess a question back to you is are there many issues that you get called to parking related at Oliver?
Over the years, I don't know about Oliver, but I've been to places, too many people, there's a family function, and, somebody's parking in my spot and this and that. It's just something that we shouldn't have to be dealing with.
Right.
And so, but it's all over. It's not unique to apartment complexes. It's subdivisions. Yeah. It's mobile home communities. It's always a parking-related issue. The neighbor's having a graduation party and cars are lined up down the street, and things like that. So, yeah it's
I feel for you.
What's that?
I feel for you.
Yeah, and I look at it also, too. Yeah, it's two parking space per unit, but if you have a husband and wife, you have people co-sharing an apartment, so there's 2 cars, got a kid driving, there's a third, where's that third car going to go? If on a 2-bedroom, I've got 2 driving right now that are in the house, and I've got 4 cars sitting in my driveway. If you have one person other than the husband and wife driving in the house, now you need 3 spots. So
I was thinking about that as well, but I'm also thinking, a 2-bedroom apartment is also attractive to somebody who wants a home office and a bedroom. So how many of those units are going to be occupied by a family that has a teenager ready to drive? So I think there's going to be quite a few of those apartments that would be more than likely just one person living in it, requiring maybe 1 vehicle, and you got an extra spot. I don't know if it's going to be as dense as what you might be thinking. And I don't know how many issues come up at apartments either. I really don't.
Right.
I'm taking your word on that one. But my thinking is, overall, what's potentially worse, right? Some potential parking lot disputes or downstream storm issues, or water gets into somebody's yard or something along those lines because we're forcing too much water down the system. That's the other part. I'm thinking that could affect a lot of residents, and it could be a lot of money to correct. That's my thinking of, if we have to play devil's advocate.
Right.
And I will say, we don't ask for a lot of variances on these apartment projects, but when we do, we ask the management team to go around and ask other managers at other sites, what's their feeling for this request. Are we asking for too much where you're going to have a problem to deal with down the road? And well, I don't have like a formal answer, but the answer was the 2 spaces, like I said, that's our normal we designed for, and they felt that asking for the 2 here was not an issue.
They build a lot of units too. You build a lot of units. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of answers maybe speaks to both of your points, right? I mean, there's somebody has your opinion, somebody has your opinion, and there's at least some calculation out there, right? And some data behind it saying that based on those factors, number of, three car families and number of 1-car families, it all averages out to be 1.7's kind of tight, 1.8's okay, and 2 seems really good.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're doing, I think, 4,000 units this year in design, and the average is right there at 2. Some's 2.1, some's 1.9, as low as 1.5. The highest was 3.1, but we got a variance down to 2.
All right. We might still have 2 dissenting motions here. I don't know, Mr. Gore, if any of this has changed your mind, if you're still thinking the same way.
You brought up a good point. It's a choice of 2 evils, parking or drainage. And I do agree with you that drainage is important also. So somebody wants to make a motion, I'm not ready to.
Yeah, I guess my point to the drainage is if it could be optimized to add more spots based on what the design works out to be, that would be preferred as opposed to limiting the number of spots. I know we're kind of early in the process. Usually we're getting this information at the very end of the site plan where all that information's available.
All right, I'll ask the question again. Does anyone prepared for a motion? Other than Mr. Gore, I know where he stands.
All right, we'll go ahead for the second one. Go ahead and make a motion that we approve the parking variance request of up to 68 spaces for the subject property, Bedford Place Apartments 2, LLC, vacant land north of Stearns Road, east of Lewis, parcel number 58-02-026-059-01, on the practical difficulty basis of the downstream drainage structures that have been deemed undersized or inadequate by the Monroe County Drain Commission, such that the design of this site in terms of impervious area relating to the parking lot and the building, sidewalk, etc., does not exceed the capacity of the structures downstream that would cause flooding or other undesirable effects to those properties.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have support?
I'll support.
All right, Ms. Rector, we're ready for the vote.
Mr. Dersch.
Aye.
Mr. Helm.
Aye.
Mr. Gore.
No.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Lake.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to public comment, and seeing we don't have public here, we're going to skip that. We'll write the board and staff comments.
Our deadline is July 18th for the next meeting. We've had some inquiries, but no official submittals. That's all I have.
Nothing for me, thank you.
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
Good discussion as always. I appreciate everyone's opinions and everything we bring here.
Got nothing for tonight.
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
Just everybody have a good evening.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
Look
do
for
have
a
one.
motion to adjourn.
I do have one more thing.
Sorry.
Please keep in mind, next month's meeting will be August 11th. It's the second Monday of the month due to the election.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Support?
Support.
Favor?
Aye.
Adjourned.